Indians worship cricket, movies, and tea. That's not an exaggeration. Their deep affection for this trifecta elevates the humdrum of daily life to an almost religious experience. Of the three, however, I would venture that tea serves as their most faithful and dependable companion. Whether you're burning the midnight candle for an examination, or being bored to death in an office cubicle, or simply gathering around with family in the comfort of your home, breaking biscuit and gossip, there is no occasion or ceremony that a hot cup of tea, or chai as we call it, does not instantly elevate in India. From early mornings to late nights, an activity can always be complemented with this tasty beverage. Tea in India is a unifying symbol, defying all social and cultural boundaries, transcending race, religion, or language. Doesn't matter who you are, you drink tea. So imagine my surprise when I find that the only reason we are blessed with these dark aromatic leaves stored safely in an airtight container on the kitchen shelf is because India stole it from China. That's right, stole, robbed. Well, not them exactly, but their British overlords. Still, colonial India was still India. But I'm skipping ahead by more than a few beats here. So let us start at the starting, which is fairly recent given how Indian history goes all the way back to antiquity. But India's love affair with tea only started less than 200 years ago. For most of Indian history, drinking tea or chai wasn't a daily ritual. In fact, it barely existed on the social landscape at all. So, as late as 1850, tea in India was a substandard affair on all accounts. The quality of the leaf was subpar, and the scale of production and consumption was negligible. For the average Indian, having chai was not something that ever came up in regular conversation, a stark contrast to life now. All that changed when the British, who were the colonial masters of India at the time, got fed up of the Chinese supremacy in the arena of tea. The British had gotten horribly addicted to the high quality Chinese fare and failed miserably to extract the secrets of their manufacturing techniques. Try as they might, they could not replicate the wondrous smell and the refined taste of the Chinese chai. Chinese had figured out how to squeeze the goodness from tea over many centuries. They had spent countless years experimenting and innovating, turning tea consumption into a cultural cornerstone. They had even introduced selective breeding, hybridization, and other scientific techniques. As trade went, Britain was consuming tea at a mad, feverish pace, whereas the Chinese were sweeping up the silver with both arms. This one way wealth transfer could not continue. But what could Britain do? The Chinese guarded their secret of the tea with life and limb. Foreigners weren't allowed inside the mainland without being watched like hawks, and that too not for long. Sending spies was the next best idea, but what would James Bond know about tea? Martini, perhaps, but tea? He wouldn't know where to begin, even what to look for. No, they needed a whole new breed of operative here. Enter our hero, Robert Fortune. Yes, that was his name. Was not an MI6 agent on a secret mission for Her Majesty's Secret Service. No, no, he was a botanist. Yes, a botanist under the employ of the Horticultural Society of London. Citing. So, who was Robert Fortune and how did he do it? Our geeky spy was born at Berwickshire, probably butchered that, Berwickshire, Scotland in 1812. 30 short years later, Fortune was sailing for China on behalf of the Horticultural Society of London. He had worked hard to earn his reputation, and this trip was his reward. The expedition was to bring back specimens of all kinds of exotic plants, including variants of tea. His ship arrived at the port of Hong Kong in 1843. From there, he sailed north to Shanghai. He proved extremely resourceful during his excursions into the interiors of China. He shaved his head, wore a wig with the traditional tail, or queue as it's called, and wore Chinese costumes to blend in with the locals. Since he traveled in the north, his somewhat rounded eyes did not give away his true identity, since the Chinese features in the north approached those of the Europeans. Still, had anybody taken a second look, the whole operation would have been blown sky high, and Fortune himself would have fallen to ruin, maybe even fatally so. So we are happy to report that he did very well to stay in the shadows, come out on top, despite facing some seriously unfavorable odds. When he returned to England triumphant after 3 long years in China, he brought back more than 200 species of plant. He had taken detailed notes and drawings, which he turned into a very successful book upon his return. His adventures, traveling across the hinterlands of China, dressed as a Chinese, caught the imagination of the public. He was also the first European botanist to reveal that the green and the black teas came from the same tea plant, answering a long standing question in the scientific circles. Fortune's fortunate trip behind enemy lines finally gave Britain the intelligence asset they needed to bring down the Chinese monopoly. Henry Harding, the Governor General of India at the time, pushed for India becoming a source of excellent tea, hence revenue. The Himalayan tea seeds had come from China and had done reasonably well, although were not even close to the Chinese variety that the world was hooked on. The Assam tea had been growing wild in Bengal, and there was potential for India to become the next tea producing giant. The East India Company, sensing an opportunity as only they could, quickly made Fortune an offer he could not refuse. They presented him with an all expenses paid trip back to China on 5 times his current salary. He was to bring back as many tea seeds as he could and figure out just how the Chinese got their tea to be so goddamn lip smacking good. Also, if he could bring back some actual tea experts with him, that would be amazing too. Any other non tea plants or seeds he procured would be his to keep, of course. From Fortune's perspective, he couldn't have asked for a better gig. He privately never thought that the secrets of tea should stay hidden. This was a beverage that should be enjoyed by everyone and not held hostage by a single country. Given his opposition to the intellectual property surrounding tea, I have a feeling old Robert would have done well with the open source community today. So, anyway, off Fortune went to China again, this time in 1848. Back he was, in disguise, this time with a retinue of servants. Here's an excerpt from his memoir as he prepared himself for the perilous journey back into the heart of China. Here he's speaking of one of his Chinese servants shaving his head to go with the tonsured look of the local Chinese. He did not shave, he actually scraped my poor head until the tears came running down my cheeks and I cried out with pain. I suppose I must be the first person upon whom he had ever operated, and I am charitable enough to wish most sincerely I may be the last. That's my Robert Fortune accent. So, Fortune scouted through the Chinese mountains, sneaking past the best tea gardens, especially the mystical Wu Yi mountain, quietly engaging in corporate espionage. He took meticulous notes on the unique and hitherto secret production of tea. He realized that the rolling process was very important. So was the withering process, where the leaves were plucked and spread out over huge plates. Withered leaves were then put in a wok at just the right temperature, followed by a tedious sorting process of gathering the unbroken leaves. Now, I won't go into details of the entire process he uncovered because I don't know them and I doubt you would want that kind of detail anyway. But his trip was a smashing success. Not only did he return with the documented process and hundreds of thousands of tea seeds, he actually returned with the Chinese experts and tools that would prove to be crucial for the success of East India Company's corporate ambitions. The EIC immediately put these experts to work and within decades changed the game of global tea production. India overtook China as the biggest producer of tea in the world, and the Chinese lost their biggest leverage in global trade. Indians themselves began consuming tea an unholy amount, so much so that it is today indistinguishable from the larger Indian culture. As I close this episode, I cannot help but wonder how much overlap there is between world cultures, just how much we actually owe each other, and how unaware we are of these little stories that shape our lives today. So, the next time you sit with a cup of your favorite beverage, whisper a thank you to the Chinese, who through centuries of toil and innovation brought out the very best that tea had to offer, and to the British, who stole the chai from China for us. This is Fringe History. If you like this video, share, subscribe, like, leave a comment. Um, until next time, take care.